Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well respected professional focused on caregiving for seniors from New York, USA, Mim Senft, GBA AICWWS. Mim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Mem is the co-founder and CEO of Motivity Care, a company that reduces the time, cost, and risks of aging and caregiving for employees and for individuals. She's also the co-founder of the nonprofit Global Women for Wellbeing. So, Mem, let's start by asking you the first question. You spent time in corporate wellness and benefits design, and you decided to co-found Motivity Care. Tell me about Motivity Care and what was the motivation for this transition?
Well, I think big picture in many places, and particularly in the US, we have an aging workforce and an aging population.
Mm,
And so looking at where we're going in the next 5 to 10 years,
mhm,
uh, started to dig into what are going to be some of the biggest cost drivers for employers.
mm,
And according to AARP data,
mm,
your employees are now more and more being asked to care for adults
mm,
and aging adults in their life.
mhm,
And that can end up being approximately 24 extra hours every week just on care management. So that's not direct care, that's doctors and lawyers and transportation,
mm,
food.
mm,
Mom forgot her password. All of those kinds of phone calls that you get, but
mm,
there's a
mm,
real hit to productivity, burnout, and turnover for employers.
wow. And as you were taking a decision to move, was there any kind of a pivotal moment when you realized that that was the time you really wanted to move into a comprehensive caregiving solution?
It's a good question. I think, like many of us, you have to have like an aha moment.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, even though I looked at the data, for me personally, two things that
Mm,
I'll share initially. First, my husband, and this isn't even aging in care,
mm.
was in an unexpected hit and run accident that was
Oh no.
very
Mm,
severe.
mm,
And it turned my life upside down.
mm,
In the hospital with him, trying to manage a business, so it was now my firsthand experience. We also had gotten a phone call from my father, who had been perfectly healthy 6 weeks before, thought he was, and had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
oh God.
And so the scramble to put everything together and
Mm,
call, is there a will? And, what does he really want? And doctor's appointments and figuring all this out really underscored just how overwhelming it can be and
mm,
how much time it really takes. Plus, it's
mm.
just confusing. If you're
Yeah.
not, experienced and you haven't gone through this multiple times,
Mm.
uh, there are things you can forget and you end up putting yourself at risk.
Wow. Thank you for sharing this. So let's talk about Motivity Care now, Mim. You told me about Motivity Care, but tell me, how has this evolved since you started? And how do you differentiate yourself from so many other similar agencies?
Yeah. Initially, it was looking at, how do we,
Mm,
right, serve people? What would make the most sense to take the complexity out of all of
mm,
this?
mm,
So on one hand, there is the information and documentation, and we tend to
mm,
think of that as just legal or, and some medical or just medical. But the
mm.
truth is, medical is not just your medical history. It
Yeah.
is food preferences and over-the-counter drugs, not just prescription drugs.
Mm,
And is that person's primary language English, which can
mm,
be key to understanding in an emergency
yeah.
situation.
Mm,
And so we decided to build something that could allow you to put everything that
mhm,
you needed in one place and securely be able to access it.
mm,
But also make sure, from a security perspective, that you could share what you needed to share down to a document or piece of information. So
mm,
it's not an all or one proposition from a technology
mm,
perspective.
mm.
In addition to that, the
Mm,
second real challenge for people is how do I vet resources? How do I know that that lawyer really has the experience? Or we're going through a very difficult medical situation. Do I have the right
mm,
kind of doctor to help guide us through that?
mm.
Do I understand what a true financial care plan is? And that's a big one
Right.
because people think about retirement,
Hmm.
but we don't fully understand what the cost of care may be and how that may impact our retirement plan.
Yeah, well said. And you support a lot of employees who are also caregivers. And my question is, what are some of the common challenges faced by employees who are also caregivers, and how does Motivity Care address them?
So you've got an employee that suddenly gets thrown into caregiving. Maybe mom has an early Alzheimer's diagnosis, or there's a cancer
Mm,
diagnosis, or suddenly there's just a financial strain. You don't realize that your parents don't really have the money to pay for this and trying to figure all of that out. Most of that kind of vetting or phone calls is going to happen during regular work hours. When is
mm,
Medicare open, as an example, right? Or when are you going to call a lawyer or a doctor's office or a pharmacy or all of those things? And so it starts to eat into your workday.
hmm.
Plus, it's going to take somebody who has no experience and much more time than somebody who has the expertise and the background.
Right.
And so we created this so that you can tap into our network of more than 180 fully vetted resources across the country in every aspect of caregiving.
Mm,
And so we're very specific. We never give you a list. You'll get lists of like, here's the 10, right? That you can
mm,
go do to fit your budget.
hmm.
Except then you have to go and do all the vetting, right? And
Right.
how do you do that if you don't understand some of the nuances around contracting? If you're looking at facilities, what is their true patient to staffing ratio?
Mm,
These kinds of ins and outs, the types of medical equipment, how fast can I get it? How much is the cost going to be to renovate a home?
mm,
Uh, and when we talk about financial care plans, it isn't just about the cost of care. There could be
hmm.
renovation. If somebody wants to age at home, there are additional expenses that you have to take into consideration. So you
Right.
can see it starts to get complex very quickly.
Mm,
And our goal is you call us, we do an intake, we understand what your situation is, what your needs are. And also, we're going to ask you a lot of questions because, again,
mm.
we don't want you to miss pieces of the puzzle that you may
Yeah,
not be aware of.
well said. And you also have the Motivity Care LifeIntel platform. Tell me a little bit about this and how does this assist caregivers?
Right. So one of the problems is that, we tend to keep things in paper form.
Hmm.
So a power of attorney document or, some of these things. But the truth is, if you get that emergency call,
Hmm.
how long is it going to take you to get to that piece of paper? Most
Right.
of us are not carrying those files around with us on a business trip or on vacation. And so our technology is built so that you can keep in your hand or
Hmm.
via desktop
Hmm.
everything
Hmm.
you need in one secure place. So you can easily download a POA as an example to an emergency room, if
Right.
you need to do that, or access to the list of prescription drugs that
Hmm.
that person may be taking. But it's also there to remind you of certain things because these
Hmm.
are stressful moments. And so you may forget they have an unusual blood type. You may forget they have a latex allergy
Hmm.
as an example,
Yeah.
right? It's also about thinking about that person's home. So it's meant to cue you to say, okay, we've got the emergency, but who's keeping eyes in the house? Does mom have a
Hmm.
pet? If
Hmm.
something breaks in the home while your loved one is getting care in a facility, is there a trusted person that they want to come into their home?
Right. Interesting. You also, when I was reading about you and preparing for this conversation, I was fascinated to read about your chief of staff approach.
Hmm.
How does this work in practice for clients managing caregiving responsibilities?
So there are, as we've already discussed, many pieces of the puzzle, and
Absolutely.
you often need somebody who can make sure that all of those pieces are working together.
Mm.
So a chief of staff is keeping eyes on everything
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that each of the people that you have either contracted with or are supposed to do something, that everybody is doing the job they're supposed to do in the order they're supposed to do it. So
Mm.
another analogy for that is think about caregiving like building a house.
Mm.
You can have the best plumber, the best electrician, the best carpenter, but if you don't have somebody coordinating
Mm.
when and a real plan,
Mm-hmm.
is the house ever really going to get built? And this is what happens with caregiving.
Mm.
Um, it's making sure that at every stage of care, pre-planning, and we really encourage people to do that in the middle of the crisis,
Mm.
all the way through each step of this, and even after someone passes, and
Mm.
making sure that, at a very challenging time, an emotional time, that
Mm.
the administrative pieces are moving forward in the way that they should.
Mm. Amazing. Then, with the aging population growing, not just in the US, but all over the world, what proactive steps does Motivity Care recommend for individuals and families?
Great question. So I think, look, it can be intimidating, right? We don't want to think about it. It
Mm.
can be difficult.
Yeah,
The reality is, almost all of us are going to have to care for someone, make decisions
correct.
for them, or someone
Mm.
is making them for us.
Mm.
And the point of getting prepared is that you have control over those choices. You can lay out legally,
Mm.
and just from a personal perspective, I would
Yeah.
like this, I don't want this. And making sure that the right people in your ecosystem
Mm.
are the ones that are making those choices for you. And what that does
Mm.
is make sure that when the unexpected happens, you have the right pieces already in place. You're not scrambling.
Mm.
Um, oh my gosh, the will wasn't updated, or
Yeah.
the wrong people are on our power of attorney because we did this 10 years ago and now
Mm.
that person is no longer there, as a couple of examples. But I think the biggest thing is financial care
Yeah.
planning, which you're, if you're a client of ours,
Mm.
you get a free 30-minute review with top of the line people that really understand this at a deep level. And
Mm.
so they understand tax implications and places where you may not be thinking about in terms of being able to pay for
Mm.
care. And again, helping you decide, is
Mm.
aging at home the right choice? And here's
Mm.
what this really means financially.
Mm.
Or do we want to look at different retirement community options and kind of do a cost comparison?
Mm.
And I will say this, retirement communities are not what most people would think of, in the US that were around like 30, 40 years ago. Some of these
Mm.
are truly amazing, not all.
Mm.
Uh, but it's really about you having control over the choices. You
Mm.
do this in the middle of a crisis,
Yeah.
and that's where risk and mistakes can get made. Doesn't mean we're not going to help you in those
Yeah.
situations. We
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. But another perspective I wanted from you was that how does caregiving impact employee productivity and retention? And what solutions do you offer to employers?
So Motivity Care is we will work straight to consumer, but really our big mission is to say again, with an aging workforce, an aging population, 25 to 40% of
Mm.
your workforce right now
Mm.
is caring for an adult or aging adult.
Yeah.
If each one of those employees is now spending an extra 25 hours a week,
Mm.
even if it's only 15 hours a week, think about what that does to your productivity.
Mm.
Plus, just so employers understand this, and there's plenty of data to back this up, they have higher mental and physical claims costs. So it is
Mm.
impacting your overall benefits cost as well.
Mm.
Our solution is meant to be something that A, integrates into a total rewards program. So it's not just
Mhm.
a standalone program.
Yeah.
Our goal is to make sure that if your employee is upset and you have an EAP, an employee assistance program,
Mm.
that we let them know about it and make use of it. We're going to ask them if they're tapping into their own financial resources to pay for their aging adults, which is a
Mm.
huge growing problem. We want to get ahead of that for them. If they have someone in their home that
Mm.
is tax dependent, and the company has a dependent care benefit, we are very aware of that. They may not be, they may think it's just for kids, and that's not
Mm.
true.
Mm.
It's pre-tax dollars. So it's important that it isn't just a standalone, it's enhancing a total rewards program.
Mhm.
and actively, quickly getting the information to your employees so they can stay focused on their job,
Mm,
not be overwhelmed.
mm,
Because when these employees end up getting thrown into this without support, many of them are now coming in late,
mhm,
leaving early, having to get pulled between, do I go with mom to the doctor's appointment?
mm,
Or, do I need to be there for the meeting?
mm,
Uh, it's really having that support system around you. So it's to help your employees stay productive, not burn out,
mm.
not have those churn costs,
Yeah.
turnover costs, and give a benefit, frankly, to employees that can be deeply meaningful to them.
Mm. Great response. But the other thing that I've often wondered about caregiving is that when you have such diverse cultural and familial caregiving practices, how do you tailor your services to meet different client needs?
Right. And so thank you for asking that question because you're right. Caregiving is specific to your situation.
Correct.
Spiritual beliefs. We even ask about political viewpoints. Why?
Mm.
Not that we care,
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, but we want to make sure that anybody coming into your home
Mm.
is not going to upset the apple cart. We
Yeah.
don't, it's not that we, have any viewpoint in one way or the other, but we want to have really in-depth information about what your specific needs and wants are,
Mm.
and that it really is to support that person in the best way possible.
Mm.
And so, coming out of a global kind of perspective, it is different in different places. Now, I want to be clear, our concierge services are right now US based for the most
Mhm.
part, but our
Yeah.
technology is truly global so that
Mm.
if you have a parent in another country, and I do personally, my mother-in-law lives overseas. She's
Mm.
going to be 95 this year.
Wow. Mm.
And no matter where I am or my husband is, we have in our hand literally everything we need if
Mm.
we get that phone call. We're not flying thousands of miles. We're not trying to find a piece of paper. We have the peace of mind of knowing that we have
Mm.
what we need when we need it.
Mm. Amazing. And what initiatives do you take to raise awareness about the challenges of caregiving?
So, like most companies, we do a newsletter, and that's
Okay.
fairly standard. But we also do a free webinar series.
Mm.
And the goal is to educate our clients and the public
Mm.
about different aspects of this at a deep level. We bring on true vetted experts, not just anybody,
Mm.
uh, so that you can listen and decide, well, this might be better. Many of these folks are part of
Mm.
our vetted ecosystem. And so
Mhm.
you're actually meeting some of the people that we may refer you to. But
Mm.
again, we're very careful about
Mm.
making sure it's the right fit, right
Mm.
cultural fit. Just because somebody is very good at what they do, it still may not be the right fit for your family.
Right.
And that's why we want to make sure that we get to know you, not just in terms of your needs,
Mm.
but it is more of those personal things, personalities, things that you like to do. Um, and what your specific challenges are.
Mm. But I remember when my parents were aging and I was looking after them, the doctors often told me that uh, your parents are in any case living in a world of their own. What are you doing about yourself as the caregiver? And I
Ah,
want to get your perspective on what do you do for caregivers? How do you educate them?
right. That is a great, well, coming out of, as you said, employee benefits and then employee health and well-being, also through all the research and events that we've done through Global Women for
Mm.
Well-being,
Mm.
we know that caregivers will often put themselves last.
Mm.
And we know that, and thank you for being a caregiver to your own parents, but we know it disproportionately impacts women.
Yeah.
It's usually the mom or the sister or the
Mm.
wife or,
Mm.
whoever that is. So we are also a support system for them,
Mm.
meaning we have a caregivers group
Mhm.
that is really meant for you to come vent, talk, have some support.
Mm.
Uh, Again, if we feel like you're stressed, we're going to encourage you to talk to your EAP provider at
Mm.
your employer because mentally it can be incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
We are often asking them, and what are you doing for yourself?
Mm.
You know, are you giving yourself time?
Mm.
Because here is the scary thing. There are caregivers that pass before the people they are caring for because they
Wow.
never, for one reason or another, right? And so we don't want to think about
Yeah.
it. We're
Yeah.
younger, we're going to be fine, but it can happen.
Mm.
And our goal again is we're not here to scare you. We're here to support you
Mm.
as they put these things in place. Plan for the unexpected. We
Correct.
hope that it doesn't happen, but if it does, there needs to be this additional level of,
Mm.
of support there. And this also bleeds into the financial piece because we've seen this, right? You're caring for that person, you're making sure that you have the money to pay for their care and,
Mhm.
whether that's aids or medical equipment or whatever it is that, that you're paying for. But
Mm.
often the person doing the caregiving is not thinking about what it means for them
So true.
in the long term. And
Absolutely.
so this is a question that we make sure we ask our clients.
Mm. Incredible. I have time for two more questions for you. What role does Motivity Care play in supporting independent living for aging adults?
Excellent question. So, like it or not, there's always going to be bumps in the road as
Mhm.
we age, right? As you age, you may not be as mobile. There are things that might be a little bit more challenging, but
Mhm.
most of us uh, talk about wanting to stay independent, right? I
Mm.
mean, of course we do. Why
Absolutely.
wouldn't we? We've
Yeah.
lived a good life. And so it is this pre-planning that needs to go in place.
Mm.
So, some examples. If I'm going to stay in my home and if I'm ever in a wheelchair, what's the accessibility into the house?
Mm.
Does my bathroom need to be renovated? Are my doors 36 inches wide? People
Mm.
don't think about some of these things because, again, mobility, like, within it. And I think the other thing to be clear about is that it's not like a continuous, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say it in a negative way, but
Mhm.
we tend to think of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get decrepit and then
Yeah.
and that's why we don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. But
Yeah.
here's the
Yeah.
thing. Like my stepdad had a knee replacement in his 70s, right? And he
Mm.
had to recover from all of that.
Mm.
Well, he recovered and got back to dancing
Mm.
because he had everything in place. So this plan
Mm.
is about you getting back to the life that you want to live at every age. It doesn't mean that, in some cases, obviously there's going to be big challenges. But the more you have in place specific to what your vision of what that is, the better chance you have of staying independent.
Mm.
Knowing what the support system
Correct.
is. Maybe you need to put specific security things into your
Mm.
house just in case, right? So that it doesn't turn into something really major or what I would call like a roadblock. And
Mm.
suddenly now you can't. But I'll tell you the biggest thing is not being specific about who is going to speak for you in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is key that they know what you want.
Correct. Correct. Great response. And my last question for you. Ma'am, given all the technology that is coming into healthcare and into wellness and therefore into aging care as well, how do you envision the future of caregiving support services evolving over the years? And what role do you expect Motivity Care to play?
Well, the problem is not going away,
Mhm.
clearly. Right?
Absolutely.
So I think the biggest barrier right now is employers and not really focused on this.
Mm.
We have this whole discussion in the United States around Medicare and Medicaid, and obviously that's been a big discussion recently.
Mm.
But there is still not this connection in employers' minds about what this means for their bottom line.
Mm.
So more education around this, really digging into these costs. It's currently estimated to be a $50 billion cost to US employers
Yeah.
right now
Mm.
and growing. So I think awareness and getting out and explaining why this is going to be an issue is
Mm.
important. The fastest growing demographic in your workforce are people that are seniors. And
Mm.
a lot of that is because, for one reason or another, they financially can't retire
Yeah.
in some cases, or that's their sense of purpose, right? They don't
Mm.
want to. They're perfectly capable of working. They want to continue to work, but it's more likely that they may need, go through a care situation
Mm.
and or they're caring for others in their world. And so having a real support system around them is very
Mm.
important. but we can go with you. So if you
Mm,
retire, if you leave that company,
mm,
Motivity Care, just because you have us as a benefit, you can now have us as your support system after you leave that workforce if
mm,
you need us, so that you have that continuation of support behind you.
mm,
And if people plan, if people have what they need in place and the right people doing what you need them to do,
mm,
this is what reduces the time and the cost and the risk.
mm. Very well said. And on that note, Mim, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about Motivity Care. I think you're doing an amazing amount of service to so many seniors. And as you said, this problem is only going to get more and more exaggerated as the world gets to age more and more. I think I learned several new things about from you about care for the seniors, which is absolutely critical. I think culturally, we are all very different in different parts of the world. So we look after our elders in our own ways, but in our own different ways. But I learned several new things from you. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. Aging can be easier and caregiving can be made more secure. And
Abs-
that's really what we're on the mission to do. So thank
Well,
you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.